Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules Podcast. And today I am joined by William Tincup. William, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Now, I was on your podcast, on Recruiting Daily, a couple of months back, and after that experience, I made a beeline to say I have to have William on the podcast because you live and breathe HR, recruitment, staffing, and everything in between, basically. So I want to just kind of take time today just to kind of dip into your brain. Before we do, though, for those who haven't kind of come across you, could you give us a little bit of kind of a potted history and what you kind of do to keep yourself busy these days?
Sure. I am a recovering marketer and owned an ad agency and loved it for 10 years, and sold it, and fell in love with recruiting and HR. And I'm best probably thought of as more of a person that kind of an outsider in a way, because I didn't come up traditionally through staffing and recruiting and HR. But I absolutely love practitioners. So I spend most of my time talking to vendors, technology vendors, and some services vendors and practitioners. And so I split my time talking to them about what's going on, so that I kind of have a feel for how these things are fit together, or how they're supposed to fit together, or how maybe they're not supposed to fit together. My full-time job at Recruiting Daily is more of a figurehead. I travel the world to speak at conferences, stuff like that. Sounds fancy. It's not really fancy. Business travel is not sexy at all. But I do a lot of podcasting, mostly because I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I did a podcast yesterday on ethical AI in recruiting and talent selection,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fascinating. And so I have great conversations with people. I say great. I get the chance to talk to people about what's going on. And aside from that, I do two other things. I advise a lot of technology startups on kind of go to market. Really,
Mm-hmm.
it's using the knowledge of what I feel is happening in the practitioners' world. And I've also recently joined a venture fund as a venture partner, and work on their investment committee. So I get to see how the sausage is made on the finance side of these things, which is not my world. It's fascinating.
Where do you find the time to have a personal life in all of this? Because it sounds like you're one of the busiest guys in staffing.
It's interesting, because I was just asked that question. And the term workaholic, especially with people, I'm Gen X, so with my people of my age or generation, you hear the term workaholic, and there's always a negative connotation to it. And what it usually means is you work at the expense of these other things, family, hobbies, whatever. I take a lot of pride in working. I get a lot of pleasure and pride in talking to people. Now, it never supplants my love of my wife or my kids or time with them. But my kids are at 16 and 8 and 12. They're at an age where they don't need daddy
Mm-hmm.
all the time. In fact, it's actually a problem if daddy is there all the time. So I'm at a really, really good place now, where I have a little bit more time on my hands, and I mix in my hobbies. I collect coins, so I'm a geek when it comes to that type of stuff, and I'm about to start painting again. So um, I think if you look at my LinkedIn profile and you say, "Oh my gosh, you're advising 20 plus startups," true, but they don't all show up on the same day at the same time. If they all showed up on Tuesday at 2:00, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be underwater.
Yeah.
But they don't. They need different things at different stages, and I can do a lot of that stuff late at night or on the weekends or at different points when I want to fit it in.
And
And
these
it's
startups you
fun.
work with, these startups you work with, William, are these all in the HR kind of tech
All
space?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes you the perfect person to talk to about the future of recruitment, which is what we're going to kind of kick around today.
Sure.
Your experience, your background, and your kind of complete kind of all these touch points you've got with this put you in a great position to talk about that. So, where should we start? Let's kick off with technology, right? And let's talk about the kind of role of technology in the future of recruitment. The things we're all kind of talking around at the minute are obviously AI, whether it's actual AI or whether it's something which is just
Yeah.
if this
Machine
then that,
learning. Yeah.
exactly, or something like that, or even something even something far simpler, but it's just being kind of
Yeah.
passed off as
Bots.
clever.
Yeah.
Exactly. From all the kind of automation that we get, that was being kind of rammed down our throat, where is it actually
Hmm.
automation or is it just scheduling or something like that? That's the kind of state of play we're at. So I think we're kind of on the cusp of something, right? And
Right.
some businesses have kind of gone a bit further. Some people haven't even kind of touched this. But from from the businesses you're kind of talking to, the businesses you work with, from your kind of your guests you have on the Recruiting Daily, where is technology within the recruitment space going? You know what I mean? Where are we in 5 years? Where are we 10 years?
So the struggle is real. And for your audience, the interesting part is where technology, the lines of demarcation of what is automated, what's robot driven and computer driven, and what's human led. And so they keep moving kind of the goalpost, if you will, in this regard. And every company is going to face this challenge differently, and it might even go down to every position this is faced differently, where what gets automated, the lower value task is the first to go. So
Mhm.
take you and I have grown up in a world where there were full-time people that all they did was schedule candidate interviews. That was their job. Like I've known people that was their gig, that was their job. They just scheduled interviews. There's at least 40 bots now today that can do that exact task far more efficiently and without any human interaction whatsoever. It can look at Outlook, it can look at Gmail, it can find the times that everyone's available on the team, it can put a Zoom link in there, and everyone gets the same invite and it's done. And in seconds. So that's a low value task.
Mhm.
That's an example of a low value task. So in theory, what this does is free recruiters up to actually do the stuff that's more human centric, like really creating a wonderful candidate experience, really caring deeply about fit and not just putting, people into jobs and filling positions. So the struggle is real in the sense of like, where do these lines, where do these lines stop and start? I don't think anybody's got it figured out. I think where you see it in 5 years is you see more of where those lines are. It's clear, it's more defined.
Yeah.
That these are the important inflection points for recruiters.
So this is the point
Here,
in
here, here.
So this is the point in 5 years' time when the recruitment consultant is an actual consultant, and
That's right.
they're consultative and less kind of transactional. Which I'm
Yes,
sure there are businesses out there that say they're kind of doing that now. But my feeling, and I'm sure you can give me your thoughts, is there's chunks, massive, great big chunks before and after that, which can basically just be kind of run by a machine at this point.
that's right. That's right. And and now juxtapose that for the audience, juxtapose that from the candidate's perspective and how the candidate's expectations have changed because of so many different factors, but we'll just say the consumerization of technology, right? So you can get Amazon Prime, you can get it today, you can get it tomorrow, you can get it at 10 o'clock tonight, like when do you want it? The candidate's expectations have changed all throughout, just not just in recruiting, but throughout the entire employee life cycle. So they're thinking in seconds, minutes, and hours. And in most corporate and staffing solutions situations, we're thinking in months, weeks, and days.
Mhm.
And so you have this immediate conflict with candidates because when they submit a resume or when they submit a job app, they respond to a job advert, then they expect a response, not just a response like, hey, thank you for your thing. They expect a, hey, we've looked at your resume, we've already queued it. Here's what's next. They
Hmm.
they don't want to just a robot response. They want to know what's next, and they want to know in seconds, minutes, and hours. So when we come back to them and say, hey, listen, the team's going to meet in 7 days from now or 4 days from now, we're going to schedule a call, they're gone. Like, we've already lost that talent.
So this is this kind of these are the kind of things where what can recruitment learn from Netflix kind of scenarios, right? And that
Yep.
and that kind of or what can Netflix learn from Amazon? But is that something we should really try and kind of emulate? The fact, should we be looking to move recruitment to a much more kind of e-commerce kind of style, or is it just we should just pick and choose from that? Because
Yeah.
we have these conversations all the time, is what we can learn from other industries, but we're
Right.
not other industries, and
Yeah. Right.
can we kind of merge the two, or should we just try and kind of do what we do better?
I think we pull the best of things because like there was a hugely popular book here in the States years ago from the one of the founders of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, and it was about the culture of Zappos. And throughout, it just proliferated every HR conference that people wanted this culture of Zappos at their company, and it failed miserably at other companies because it worked at Zappos. It was built and configured and modeled and manufactured and made mistakes and did all that stuff inside of one box that made sense. And once you took it outside that box, it didn't make sense. I think that's the thing that we learn about other industries is there are things that we can pull that we should pull. Like the Amazon tracking, where your package is. It's now with Billy, and Billy is on the road, and Billy's stopping here, and that there's some wayfinding there that would be actually pretty good for candidates to have an understanding because it would really mean that we would have to get our stuff in order, our lives in order, our technology and our process and everything in order to be able to make that happen. So it actually force us to actually get better and more efficient. But do we actually steal that? No, I think we use the better parts and we make sure that it's recruiting, hiring, candidate centric. And if we do that, then it brings the best out of us.
So that's the candidate side, right? Obviously, within recruitment, we've got and in a minute, all we're talking about is candidate and candidate attraction and talent attraction.
Hmm.
But there's a couple other audiences, and it'd be interesting to kind of get your thoughts on the kind of role of technology and the future of technology. So one is your employer brand.
Hmm.
From a staffing and recruiting kind of agency perspective, bringing on new consultants, bring on new team members, again, incredibly difficult and a slightly different technique. Again, from as one marketeer to another, that there's a distinct difference. And then there's a client perspective as well, and then kind of engaging with clients, attracting clients, and keeping clients kind of engaged and doing that kind of biz dev piece. So let's talk about the really kind of the thing that's on everyone's lips at the minute, which is employer branding and the future of the kind of tech within that and how you can use that to kind of to build your team, which every agency seems to want to do at the minute.
So employer brand is everything and nothing simultaneously. It's everything in the sense of it's a crystal in which everyone looks through your brand, through the experiences that they have with your brand. So from the website to the job advertisement and what they read, through the testimonials and the videos that they consume, through their peers and what they hear about the company, it's everything. Literally every experience with your brand. And so it's not something that can be completely manipulated, especially today. In an era of transparency, people are going to find out who you are.
Hmm.
So what I love about that is it's forcing companies to not put a aspirational brand together unless they state it as such. Like I've actually seen, and there's a couple of good examples of this, where they say, we're not this, but we want to be,
Hmm.
and we need help. That's why we want to hire people that think that are different from us, and this, that, and the other. So that's a great employer brand because they're being authentic about their own problems and genuine. And I think that's the path forward with employer branding is how close are you willing to drive to the line of who you actually are?
Yeah.
And not and if again, aspirationally is not a bad word, especially if you state it. If you tell people, "Hey, I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. Our CEO is jammed up right now with a sexual harassment claim. Like, you're going to find out about this."
Hmm.
I tend to tell a lot of the EB folks that I know and love, like, just be brutally honest, almost to the point where you're trying to drive them away. Because with honesty, I'm going to try and drive you away with the brutal honesty of self-reflection and critique. And you're either going to be able to consume that and understand that and see it for what it is or not.
Yeah.
And if not, you filtered yourself out, which is okay.
And what does that look like? What does the future of that look like? Is this because it, obviously the importance of employer brand. It's not been with us for kind of a huge amount of time, but for me, it feels like either it's going to become one of these things within every business that we accept right from day one, and we even get to the far as having internal specialists and these kind of things who work
Hmm.
with the marketeers and recruiters, etc., etc. That's either the future, or it becomes, oh, we don't need more staff in our business anymore because the times have changed, economy has changed, so let's cut that and then kind of use that budget somewhere else.
I think, where we grew up, brand was, logo, color palette, text, a lot of the things that make, art. Like I remember my first jobs in advertising, people were wearing, berets and smoking clove cigarettes, and it was a discussion of art, right?
Uh-huh.
You can't find those people in marketing anymore. They're more accustomed to dealing with Excel and
Hmm.
spreadsheets than they are art. And that's to say, there's a part of me that's sad about that. Like,
Yeah.
I like the art of marketing, not necessarily the science of marketing.
S-
I think I
That's
think
an
what's
interesting.
interesting.
So Will,
Go
that's an
ahead.
interesting point, right? Because very much I know from our business, and we're in recruitment marketing. Very much, we try to get away from the colouring in department. Okay, that's
Right,
kind of the thing that kind of gets always kind of chucked our way.
right.
So it's interesting to hear kind of your perspective that that's actually maybe that's the wrong perspective. Maybe we're going about it the wrong way. Maybe we should be more kind of embracing the fact
Well,
that.
I think the evolution of art in this particular instance is experience. So in the 60s, they had a period of art where it was all experiential. You would go to It was a happening, basically. You would go to a place, and that was the art.
Mhm.
So what we can learn from that period of art history is where we're at with employer branding now is it's experiential. What are your experiences with the brand, and how do we actually, with authenticity, how do we actually create authentic experiences that you cherish, moments that matter? Now, how do we do that at scale
Yeah.
for everyone? Recruiters, the hiring manager, the client, the candidate, for everyone involved. We want them to have these experiences that are memorable and they're important. And so I think that's where brand meets the coloring book, if you will. That's where that meets the science and experience, is bringing all those things together, because you can't leave out art, because then you don't have anything. You have blandness, and that's the worst thing you can ever have with an employer brand, is a neutral response. Right? So
Um,
you want people to either like fall in love with your brand and go, "Oh my god, I have to apply to this job. They're so compelling." Or the opposite is also great.
mhm.
"This company is horrible and I'll never ever work there." That's fantastic, because you've evoked emotion. the worst thing you could do as a branding expert is to create eh.
Yeah, nobody wants me.
Yeah,
I feel that there's an entire other podcast we could talk about this. So for listeners listening, myself and William, we've got a background in art. William's is in art history, mine's in kind of in painting and printmaking. And we were having a quick discussion beforehand around kind of our interest in art. However, I think there is a podcast in here somewhere that we should kind of we'll get you back on, and we'll talk
happy to.
around kind of art and the art of recruitment and art in recruitment. But let's move on to the kind of the this other point I just wanted to kind of get your opinion
Sure.
on, and the future of the recruitment and recruitment agency model. So one thing I've kind of noticed, and this is kind of it's become more prevalent over the last kind of couple of years, and probably slightly driven by the pandemic, but definitely kind of over the years, is what was described to me as the Madonna effect, and recruitment agencies and businesses flipping the model every 5 years, as a la Madonna, basically changing their
Hmm.
appearance, and not necessarily just from a brand, but also either kind of adapting to new styles of recruitment. So, examples of this was agencies moving into RPO and suddenly becoming RPO businesses. Now we've got businesses who are describing themselves as outsourcing kind of companies and things like that, and all kinds of other iterations. Um, is this something you have kind of you're noticing,
Hmm.
and is this something that you kind of has it been going for a long time? Because my experience tells me it's only maybe come into really kind of fruition over the last kind of 10 years or so. And where do you see that going?
Well, it's the decision for a business is recruiting core to our business, and in some businesses it isn't. So they've made the decision. And this could be in hourly or high volume, or in manual labor, or it could be in consulting. So we're not going to let's not put a label on like what industries, but it's a business decision that says recruiting is core to our business. We have to do this and do it well. So we have to know how the machine works. We now need to know everything about it so that we can make it work for ourselves. If you've made the decision as a business leader, board member, C-suite executive, a founder, and you've said, you know what, there's smarter people, better people that they're just better at this than we are, and that will ever be. And there lies then the relationship of from staffing to executive search and everything in between, of you've made the decision, someone else is just better. Now, what we've had historically in the past is crazy expectations have been layered in there,
Hmm.
that you couldn't hire this VP of marketing. So you went and hired a staffing firm to hire the VP of marketing, and you expect them to do it in a week,
Hmm.
which you couldn't do it in 6 months. So I think the reconciliation for all people that work on that side, on the outsource side, is that expectations have to be set appropriately. If we're just trying to fill seats, okay, cool. If this is a critical position, then let's talk realistically about how long and what quality, so that we have an honest conversation with one another. And I think that's where we've just taken on the business in the past, because it was like, hey, we'll take on the business, figure it out. Like, okay, they want us to hire 100 people. Fantastic. Sign the contract and we'll figure it out. And I think that model is slowly dying.
Hmm.
We'll just figure it out after the contract's signed, because I think more is being laid on the front end of that, of what do you expect? If you expect us to do this better than you do, okay, then let's talk about that. That means that we're the experts, and when we're the experts, we're going to go and work our process, our technology. We're going to do this our way, and it will give you a slate of candidates that fit the criteria that you've given, that we've all negotiated, and then you're going to make a pick. Okay. Like, I think it's part of that's transparency, and that's kind of the era. And some of it's we've just learned some things through the years. Like, we're just gotten a little bit smarter about clients' expectations.
Hmm.
And not every model, like I remember when John Wilson created Wilson HCG in Tampa, I just happened to be in Tampa at the time, and he and I had lunch, and he was very new at the RPO side, and he said, I'm going to come at this differently. I said, do tell. He goes, I'm going to create a luxury service. I said, well, tell me a little bit about that. He goes, I'm going to charge people disproportionately higher, and I'm going to put a team around them that talk to them every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And I want their hardest to fill positions. I don't want anything mundane. I don't want something that's repeatable. I want the hardest to fill. It's like a Bentley. It's custom built. And you know what? I thought he was crazy. I literally thought he was crazy because that wasn't the model of the time in the US. It wasn't the model of the time. It was $2,500 per hire. Doesn't matter who you're hiring. Nurses, doctors, people that, run a gym, like, it doesn't matter. It's just $2,500. So to hear that, it was so crazy. But he's probably one of the most successful RPOs in the US
Mm-hmm.
because he chose a different path. He chose a customer service path, a luxury service. Like when you buy a Mercedes, it's a different buying experience when you buy a Honda.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all know that. Nothing against either brand. It's just we know that there's a different buying experience. There's a different customer experience for people that go to a Ritz-Carlton than go to a Hilton.
Mm-hmm.
That's just is what it is. So I think the staffing firms, everyone that's in staffing, so staffing all the way to executive search and everywhere in between, have to figure out who they are and who they want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and how they want to interact with customers around expectations and experience.
Makes complete sense. William, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. We will include all of your details in the show notes. So if anybody wants to kind of reach out and get in contact,
I would love that.
if you've got more time to kind of take on more kind of more advisory roles with startups, I'm sure there's kind of a few out there listening. But it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm sure we'll have you back on in the future. But for now,
Anytime,
thank you very
James.
much. Thank you.
Wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much, and thanks for the audience.